Hey, this is Rob Moore with a 40 Business Group, and I'm here with
Jerry Gulley.
and he is running for Kenosha County Executive.
Correct.
So he's going to be the CEO, or he's running to be the CEO of Kenosha. We're only a couple days away from that election.
The primary is next Tuesday,
Okay.
February 15th. And then the two candidates of the three that are running from that have the highest number of votes will move on to the general election, which is in April, first week in April.
Oh, that's exciting. That's exciting. So are you a little nervous, or like how are you feeling right now?
You know, I don't know what the word is for being completely exhausted and completely pumped up at the same time, but that's exactly what I feel. Best thing I've ever done. And things like this where people are talking about things that I do not believe they would be talking about if I weren't in the race. And that's the win.
Now, what are they talking about? I mean, what's the biggest things that they are talking about that you believe that you bring to the table?
I think I'm kind of different.
Okay.
I'm not a career politician.
Okay.
I was elected to the Board of Supervisors the last term, which is kind of like the legislative branch of county government. And then the county executive is the CEO in the executive branch.
Gotcha.
And so I'm not someone that's been around here doing things a certain way for 20 years. And that is different to people. But I've also found so many people locally who are ready to do something different. And who think, well, maybe kind of that insider boys club, maybe that's not the way it has to be. Maybe there's an alternative. And I think being someone who has been an entrepreneur, worked in business, I think I have a very different perspective on running the county as a company as opposed to a municipality. Having said that, I also understand the differences of it being a municipality because it is different than a business. And it's just exciting. A lot of people that have joined on and have talked to me are people that have never been involved in any kind of a campaign before. They've never they probably honestly might not even known that county executive was a thing.
Yeah.
Or that who was it or anything like that. The other thing that means so much to me is if you look at the events I have, if I have meet and greets, I have an event coming up Thursday night, my nomination papers, there are people involved in my campaign that have been longtime Republicans, been longtime Democrats.
Okay.
The idea that we can do something together and not be so painfully divided is comforting to people. And it's like, maybe we don't have to do it that way, where we hate each other and we make decisions just based on you're not one of us.
Love that, yeah.
Anything you say, I'm going to instantly dislike.
Oh, man.
And when someone that's on my team, if they do something that's bad, that's okay, because it's one of us. I don't buy that. I've always been really independent, and I think my compass is the same no matter what party you belong to.
Oh, awesome. Now I myself, I think I mentioned to you, I was like, I thought you had more of a Democratic type stance. And then I find out that you're independent, but you say, hey, it's not about being bipartisan or anything of that nature. Tell me a little bit more about,
what are Republican roads? Like we offer services. I mean, the reason that this is a nonpartisan role is that we are delivering statutorily mandated service of our Department of Health.
Okay.
Like, why would anyone want that to be politicized?
Ooh, I like that. Okay.
It makes no sense. But unfortunately, when you have, it's like, so I went to culinary school, and so I think about a lot of things in terms of
I've
cooking.
seen some of your videos, actually.
Right.
Yeah, some of it I'm like, it looks pretty good.
And a lot of times, like if you're making a dish and you use a really, really strong flavor, it doesn't take much for that flavor to overpower everything. And if you've got one or two really, really toxic people involved, then everyone else has to react to that.
Yeah.
And that brings that level of toxicity to everybody. So that's something that has really, like moving here, I kind of saw it from a distance, and then having been elected and serving in the legislative branch, I've seen it firsthand. And I've seen that not only does it just brings everything to a gridlock.
Okay, I can understand that. So you would say that you know how to work with those toxic people and kind of I wouldn't say change the behavior, but influence the behavior to be in a sense, for lack of better words, better.
Yeah, I mean, again, I would look at it like I want to look at ideas,
Sure.
and I want to look at data. Because I do think that if you approach something starting out from a data perspective, that's a little bit less subjective. Now you can have lots of discussions about how you fix that data, but if you don't start out with, anything that we're facing in our community, if it's vaccination rates with COVID,
right?
The data, like the number of vaccinations we dispense is data. Then we can decide, how do we increase that? Because we should all agree that that's a good thing.
Yeah.
If we want our businesses to be back and running, if we want, an actual healthy community, like those things matter. And so if you start by looking at that, you get away from some of that just.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. You said some of that, just like the pushback between two different parties, or.
Yeah, I mean, I'm the first one to say it. Like, I'll meet a lot of people, and like I said, most of the times they will not be terribly familiar with county government.
Sure.
If they are, they will mention that they've been to a Kenosha County Board of Supervisors meeting. And when they say that, I kind of hold my breath, because in the back of the mind, they're like two I'm thinking of, and I'm like, please don't say that one, please don't say that one, because if they say that one, I know what their impression of county government is, because it was miserable. Like, we have meetings that are really painful. And we bring, and the issues that are being talked about are so politicized that we have, like in the summer of 2020, and then more recently we were talking about adding a diversity and inclusion staff member to the county in the HR department to increase our awareness around the issues of diversity and inclusion.
Is that diversity, inclusion, equity?
Equity, yeah.
Equity, okay.
Yeah. DEI is kind of like in every company I've worked for, we've had a DEI staff person. So it's not revolutionary. But it was so politicized that there were scores of people that came out from the community. And when they walked into that big, austere boardroom, they instinctively split. And they instinctively sat on the side where they thought, oh, these are my people.
Okay.
And it's so painful. So my point is that when someone tells me they've been in, they know county government, I hope that's not what they know. I hope they know, maybe getting access to veteran services at the job center, or being involved in the workforce development programs that we have, or our roads, or going to our parks. Like, there's a whole bunch of stuff the county does. I want you to know that. I don't want you to know those really painful meetings where it's kind of embarrassing. Like my kid watches it, and I don't want him to think that that's the only thing that's possible.
That makes a lot of sense. So going back to what you said a lot of people from the community that came in, and they went to come see, this board meeting, and they were really stuck on the DIE or whatnot.
That was more recent, but that was one night where it was very publicized that this was coming up, and it did bring a lot of people out.
And what were some of the main concerns of that? Say, hey, what was the opposition towards wanting to have that position filled, and what was the to say, hey, we need to bring that home. We really need that position. Like, both sides, what were they saying?
So I think that on the opposition side, and I'll be the first one to say, I'm not sure that we as a county did the best job of communicating, here's what the position is, here's what it would do, here's why it's needed, and by the way, most major employers in our community have something like this in their organization.
Okay.
Right. This is not new in corporate America to have this.
Right.
And I think some of it was that. I think we didn't do the best job of explaining it.
Okay.
I think that the issues of anything involving race right now is so politically charged that just the word race brings a whole lot of baggage with it. And that instantly plays into how people, and especially in our community, that has had tangible challenges the past 2 years that are very painful to everybody, regardless of what you believe. It's PTSD in my mind. Everyone in our community is dealing with it. And so there's that. There were some people, I think, who were genuinely concerned about the cost of adding that, but it was we have the county budget for 2022 was like $306 million, and this was one position, like a salary of maybe 75, 80 grand, and then fully loaded maybe 95. So, what I would say is there are plenty of, if you really want to look at the budget and talk about is this valuable, lots of other things you can talk about. And that was the most, to me, the biggest failure on the board's part was that we had 2 nights of discussion, maybe 4 hours each night. All of it was about that one position.
Diversity, inclusion, and equity.
Well, one staff position, and then all these meetings are run by Robert's Rule of Orders, like parliamentary procedure.
Understood.
And so we had 8 hours of discussion about that one position, lots of anger, and then boom, gavel, and then we voted on the $305 million budget without discussing another single thing in the budget. So that's the big failure. It's not just, there's so many, but it's not just that we let this toxicity come into the community and we let it be right there on display, but we let it get in the way of being the stewards of what we're elected to do. Now, on the positive side, there were plenty of business owners who were in the room saying this is needed. It's needed to increase our culture because we are all, county included, having a terrible time recruiting people right now for not only the image that Kenosha has, but just every business is having it right now.
It is. That's true.
And our colleges and universities, all of our Herzing, Parkside, Carthage, Gateway, all of their presidents or chancellors signed on to a letter together saying we support this position.
Understood.
Okay. They know, we have such a challenge with education in our community right now.
We do.
The percentage of Kenosha County high school graduates that have gone on to colleges, universities, any sort of training has plummeted to 25% since the year 2020. So that's 1 in 4 of our high school graduates are going on to do anything.
Now, is that like all collectively, or is that like men, women?
That's an aggregate for all high school graduates in Kenosha County.
Wow.
And I think we would have expected it for 2020,
right?
Because there was a lot going on. But just recently, I was actually with the Chancellor of Parkside because I've been trying to interview for this position with everybody.
Yeah.
And the bad news is that the data for 2021 is going the wrong direction. And what we think already for 2022, like we're already starting to see kids that are applying for financial aid for next year in the fall.
Yes.
Those numbers are still going the wrong direction. This is crisis for our community. So there are things like that that are so much more important to me that we should be talking about than whether or not we're going to add this one position that every major company already has. So it's that kind of stuff where I think someone with literally just the energy and the passion to say, I understand you're upset about this, but we need to spend our time on this thing over here.
Yeah.
This has a long-term impact on our community. If we can't attract companies here because we don't have an educated and healthy and present workforce, we don't have any economic development. So it's really that approach to saying, I get your pain. I get that this is uncomfortable. We're going to have to deal with that. But more importantly, we got to deal with this.
Yeah.
So it's like, don't lose sight of the big stuff. And I think sometimes those really painful things get in the way of talking about what really matters.
Okay. Totally understandable. That's a lot of introspective on that subject. But one thing comes to mind of when I'm speaking with you about this is from a bird's eye view, how would you attack this situation so it wouldn't be so chaotic and there wouldn't be so much split or whatnot? And I know you mentioned that if Kenosha County had a better communication with the community, that was one thing.
Yes.
What else would you have done to make this a little bit better,
so
being in that position?
At that moment when this discussion was happening very publicly, the county was actually in possession of self-reported data from an employee survey that clearly illustrates employees of color, minorities, don't feel comfortable sharing their culture in the workplace in Kenosha County.
Sure.
That's a data point that should be shared, and you can very easily illustrate, look, we're already so challenged with recruiting and retaining people. If you can stop some percentage of your employees from feeling unwelcome in the workplace, those are like positions you don't have to refill, you don't have like all the money you save from that. So I would have approached it from a financial discussion.
Gotcha.
Just like we would say if you are trying to retain employees and you want to look at benefit packages.
Sure.
Because we'll never compete with private companies on compensation. We can't do it.
No.
We have to build a culture and we have to say, you have a career path, you have to do that. So I would look at it, I would approach it simply as a, look, we have a challenge with staffing.
Yeah.
This is one of the key things we can do to retain a good chunk of people.
Okay.
Why would you not want to do that? And also, look at it financially. Like, if we lose one of those employees and we have to do some sort of backfill while we're recruiting for that easily costs more than this one position. Easily. So it's what I do in my own business. It's like, look, I get what you're saying, but the bigger challenge is this. And if you truly care about, I mean, we're all elected, and when anyone that's running for any of these offices says, I am a good steward of your money, every single one of us will say that.
Yeah.
But it comes down to, like, are you? And are you really going to attack the stuff that makes the biggest difference? Or are you going to be really picky and painful about these little things that may make a lot of noise, but don't really impact the bottom line?
That makes sense. So it doesn't impact the bottom line.
I think it's an advantage. I completely believe that having that D&I position will save the county money, because I've seen it do that in private companies. I know that it does.
Now, I did a little bit of research on DIE, on diversity, inclusion, equality. I believe that's how you say that. And there's a lot of people that are for it. Like you said, there's polarized.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of people that are against it. The people that are against it say, well, hey, how can we measure diversity because of personality? So you see personalities, we have over 3 millions of personalities, right? Can we really get ahead of this? Is one gripe or whatever on that side. Another part is, hey, you know what? We need to make sure that we have that everyone knows how each other are diverse, and we need to make sure that we work through that, right? And then I guess that same part says, hey, you know what? This breeds more money for whatever said jobs or whatever have you. Does that make sense? Or am I like?
No, I think first off, I'd say it's something that there are plenty of people who have researched this topic for decades. So there's a lot of people, a lot of academics that spend time on this. I mean, I literally approach it from a couple of ways. One is, so I grew up in the South, and manners are Tennessee, and manners are very important. And manners, what it comes down to is, I want people to feel comfortable. And just recognizing that you may have a different faith than I do, or may have a different sexual identity than I do, or a different race, or a different ethnicity. It's just as simple as recognizing, I want to respect that. I want to be respectful. So that's the one. And then on the other is, I've had such a pleasure because I've lived other places.
Sure.
I've only lived in Kenosha for a decade. My love affair with this community is intense and it's genuine, but it is only a decade old. I'm not going to lie about that. Now, my in-laws are here, and that's why I've been visiting this place for 25 years.
Yeah. And
I always knew that I would live here, but my actual love affair is only about a decade old. But I've lived other places. I lived in the Bay Area, and I saw the value of having an incredibly active, diverse workforce. It leads to better products.
Sure.
It leads to better processes. It's a win. It's an absolute win. And so I look at it from that. I think it's an advantage. I think that it is. There's no question about it. Our workforce is going to be more diverse.
Sure.
And we have to embrace that because we want to have. Again, I really come back to Kenosha County being a company. It's got 1,100 employees. So when you are going to that, when you go vote next Tuesday, you need to think about, who do I want that has the actual skills to be managing a company that size? You may like all of us.
Right.
There may be a candidate who may have, pinned the Eagle Merit badge on your kid. That's great. But that doesn't mean that they have the skill set. No, I mean, but that's part of it, right?
That's funny.
And that's part of this role is definitely about being an evangelist and being out there being a strong cheerleader for the community. I believe that too. But almost a third of $1 billion budget. Like, these are big, and if you take away that it's a county and you had a company that was hiring its CEO, what are the qualities you would be looking for?
That makes sense. So what it narrows down to is business acumen as well, because there's a lot of money that's on the board right now. And from what I see and from what I have seen from my small research that I just began, right? I don't know as much as you do on those things, but what I see is that there needs to be change within the county employees, or not change, but new training. And I think we need to go by data, like you said. It has to be on a big scale, so everybody can go through that training. So it's almost like a retrain. Would you say almost for the county? Because
I think there are cultures. Yeah, I think there are cultural.
That's how you change culture. Right?
Yeah, I think there are cultural things that I would say we need to embrace.
Sure.
Change is never easy. And the other thing to keep in mind for a county, there are lots of things that we have to do, again, that are like state mandated, state designed. Like there's some things that you have to work within parameters. I get that. I can totally do that.
Okay.
I've worked in healthcare that had extremely strict protocols and guidelines around medication adherence. Like I get all that.
Yeah.
But you can also be extremely creative within those parameters, and you can be efficient within those parameters.
That's right.
And so I think it's that, and I think it's just the bigger concern I think is in moving the other direction.
Gotcha.
And making the wrong choice on Tuesday could put us
in a bad position.
I believe that. So I think it's everyone's responsibility and option to go research the candidates on your own.
So yeah.
But yeah, it is one of the reasons I did this in the beginning was I have seen how critical this is, and I also believe that we're at a pivotal moment.
Yes, we are.
History, like for us locally, for us, in every way.
Yeah.
And the risk of going the wrong direction, it has exponential negative impacts.
That's so huge that you said, because so I looked at the some of the budget some months ago.
Sure.
And I was really it changed my perspective on how this county is ran.
Okay. What surprised you?
The money that was
so the big numbers.
Taxes.
Okay.
I thought that was huge for me, and I was like, wow, that's a lot of money. And then also what we use for the budget. So a lot of the programs that are being ran, and you have the county employees. I believe how many county employees do you have?
It approaches 1,100. Some of those are seasonal,
right.
Like we have people that work in the golf department,
right.
The parks, so that increases. And those may not be all year-long seasonal, but I think like 1,060 or so is the full-time year-long.
And then my big question is for me, when I see something like that, I say, okay, so who pushed the what is it called, push the pendulum or whatnot to make it swing in a way where it can almost that we can shift it so we can make sure that we're spending the money the right way, that we're doing all the things that we need to do, that the behavioral positions are matching, because that's what I do in my business as well. Look at behavior.
Yeah. And that alignment.
In alignment with it or whatnot. What can we do to get everyone on the same page? How can they work better together? How can we put one person from this department to work with this person in X, Y, and Z? Mix it up a little bit and get, like you said, more profitability.
Yeah.
And also, more what is it? Community effort, and people can come together. I mean, with changes, because I do consulting, sometimes it means that you do unfortunately lose a couple people here and there, and you don't want to. That's not what you want to do, but sometimes that happens. Sometimes there are casualties to that, and I guess that's where it comes down to. You're not going to be able to make everybody happy,
right?
But what would you say to somebody that may have that concern?
Well, so first off, there are certain positions, like leadership positions in the county, that are essentially, the phrase is they serve at the pleasure of the county executive. Yes. So they are people that he, brings on board. Yes. I've tried to make the rounds to all those individuals, and there are 2 or 3 of them that I feel like they, for whatever, for lots of good reasons, they feel like their time is done. Like they
wow.
They're approaching an age where they want to, they don't want to do it.
Yeah.
So there will be some natural turnover.
Mm-hmm.
That will be part of it. I don't want to be afraid of that.
Right.
I've always felt like that's such a great opportunity.
Embrace it.
Yeah, and leverage those great skill sets.
Embrace it, guys.
Those are people that can be leveraged in other ways. Right?
Yeah.
So find out, it's making a puzzle, and everyone is a different puzzle piece. It's really figuring out where do they fit together. By the same token, though, I encounter plenty of people that I think would be phenomenal working for the county. And have, for whatever reason, maybe have never considered it, maybe felt like they wouldn't be comfortable there.
Yeah.
That's a loss.
It is. Yeah.
A huge loss.
It is. It is.
Yeah, I mean, I like to be really, in all my companies, I've been really involved. I've been involved in hiring deeply because I think that culture is so important. And I want to introduce someone who's even just recruited and being recruited. I want to introduce that culture to them, and the best way for me to do it is this. Like, if you meet me, you're going to get the culture that I want to build.
I like that.
And so, you know, I'm a big fan of that, and and it's been successful. I have in my company right now, there are people who have worked with me or for me at other companies that have come along. And the great people always say, "Oh, what's your biggest, what's your success?" And the thing that matters most to me. I look at the company that I left in San Francisco, and that company is called Healthline. It's the largest online source of health and wellness information.
Okay.
And I know, like, when I look at it's up to like 250 employees now, and when I go to the website and I look at the About Us and it lists the 4 like C-suite, 3 of them are people I hired. And they're people,
awesome.
people that came in.
There
was a young lady who wanted to work for us, and we didn't have anything, so she was our receptionist.
Wow.
And we worked to get her involved, and like now that she's a C-level person, that is the best thing in the world.
That is amazing.
That's all I care about, because it's never about it is never about you. It's always about bringing other people up.
Sure.
And their growth is what's going to sustain you.
I like that. Now I know that from what you're saying, another thing is that when people go into these county positions, or they go into positions in Kenosha underneath you, let's say that you were hired in, right? Right. So you're hired in. These people need to have a pathway to success, if that makes sense, or to growth. Growth is really important. And I don't know if the county's really seeing that as much as it should within inside of those positions, so we can, like you said, be competitive with the private market or whatnot. What's your plan for that? Or if there is a plan?
Yeah. No, I mean, I think you're exactly right. I think that there are some inherent challenges, because some of the departments we have need a lot of people doing a very similar job, right? That's a reality. So I think what there definitely have to be career paths for everyone. There have to be succession plans in every department, and there also have to be training programs that benefit everyone, even if it's not immediately that next step.
I love that.
I want people, and this is a hard thing, and a lot of people fight me on this. At every company I've been at, I believe my job is to prepare you for your next job.
Love that.
Now, it's also my job to make sure that job is right here. It's also my job to make sure that opportunity, but especially in a job where, with many of our positions, someone could come to work for Kenosha County, or they could go to Racine County for that same job and make 20% more on day one.
Wow.
So hopefully they're going to listen to me when I say, you know what, you may take that job for 20% more, but you're not going to be invested in. If you come here, I'm going to make sure that you personally are invested in. So you have to think about what's better for you long term. That, I think, is key, and I've always done that, and I want that to be part of what we do here.
Wow. So now I'm gonna digress a lot. So
love it.
Tell me about how you got into politics and or just community within inside your county or whatnot.
Yeah.
What did that look like, and who was a person that you looked up to? That was like a loaded question, right?
So, as I said earlier, I don't consider myself a politician. I'm definitely the least politician-y of the people in this race. That's because there's a lot of bad stuff that comes with that word politician.
There is.
Also, though, if you strip away the bad stuff, there's a lot of good stuff. It is ultimately service. It is one of the ultimate levels of service, because you are able to provide, if you think about what the county does, 1/3 of the county budget is the Department of Human Services. That is literally the services that help the elderly, the disabled, veterans, children. Like, it is literally the soul, right? Like, that is the stuff that matters. And so there's all the nasty stuff that goes along with it.
Right.
But in this position especially, there's also the opportunity to have an impact on the people that need it the most.
That's huge.
So if you're someone, and I've always been about service, and I've always told my kids, the only thing that matters is live a life of service. And I don't care if it's to your religion or to, anything, if it's to your community or whatever, like you deserve that. And the community deserves you to live a life of service. So I felt like I needed to do it. And 2 years ago, the Kenosha County Board of Supervisors is divided up into districts. We're elected district specific.
Right.
So where we are in Carroll Beach is my district. And the gentleman who had been the county supervisor for this district was not running. And I'd always toyed with the idea of it, and I was really drawn to the county because, again, my background is in health and public health policy, and so an ability to impact that was really critical to me. And then so here I am in January of 2020, walking around many of these streets talking about public health. No one gave a crap about public health in January. Now in March of 2020, everybody cared about public health.
It did.
And so I had this incredible, and the only word for it is privilege. Like I had this privilege to be in a position to, in some small way, help drive and steer how we dealt with that.
Okay.
And so I believe that was like, whatever you want to believe in, I think that was meant to be. I really do. And then, having done it for this length of time, really seeing the impact that county government has on everyone's lives. And again, most people don't understand it. County government is a lot like your personal health.
Yes.
If everything is going okay, you don't think about it.
Yeah.
Now, if you have a pain, or if your road is blocked and there's construction, you think about those things.
Exactly.
And the flip side is that in this time, I've also seen the really, really painful, divisive nature.
Sure.
And I think I can do the business side of it very effectively because I am the candidate that has the most experience in private business. And then I also think that my heart, like my servant's heart, is going to help solve that other stuff. And so it really was something where I had to do it.
That's amazing. And one more question. Who did you look up to?
That's a really hard one.
Yeah.
Because I believe if you follow your own compass, you can't get too distracted from either side. Now, what I do love to do is look at an individual and say, I love that thing that you did. And I'm going to take that thing and I'm going to pair it with this thing over here. That's been a real strength of mine. I do believe that I've had the privilege of working for people that have given me, that have pushed me. And oftentimes when I really needed it, the company that I mentioned that I left in San Francisco, was extremely successful there. I mean, I grew the company from, we didn't have that business when I started there. We launched it. And every year, the gentleman that I reported to, at my annual report, I always got like it was on a scale of 1 to 5. He always gave me a 3.
Oh, that is awesome.
And every year for 2 weeks, I wouldn't speak to him. Because I'm like, I am a 5.
Oh my God.
I am delivering this stuff.
I had somebody like that too, yeah.
But then every year he would come back to me like, look, I know you can do more. And so that 3 is in context of what I know you can deliver. Okay. It's not compared to anyone else. You are at a 3 because you can do these things and you're not doing them.
Yes.
And that has been really, I like that. That has worked for me. That doesn't work for everybody.
That's huge. And I think that works with people that are...
His name is David Kopp, if he's listening.
Yeah. There you go. Yeah. I was going to ask you, I was like, what's the guy's name? Yeah. That's an amazing story that you're sharing with me. Because I almost had the same kind of thing happen with me. There was this lady that I worked for, and let me tell you, I couldn't satisfy her at all. And she was teaching me about management. She always gave me a really bad review, and everyone else like pretty good reviews. And she would say the same thing to me. She said, you can do more, and blah blah blah. And it was in retail management when I was there. Now, like 20 years older. So anyway, we go outside, and she takes me outside. She's like, we're gonna go get lunch, and I'm gonna talk to you. He's like, you gotta go She made me think about a lot of things. But not only that, she was a psych major as well.
Okay. So she was looking at
looking at those things too. But she always gave me a lot of stuff all the time, and that I think that helped. It helped me with growth, and then also I would say for my father too. It was really hard and satisfying in a lot of ways. However, when I got older, he's like, you're a greaser. He's like, you're a great kid. He's like, I just did a lot of things to push you. Everything you do is pretty awesome.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's one thing I lost my dad Christmas Eve.
Oh, I'm sorry. That's hard. I lost mine as well a couple of years ago.
Yeah, and I don't know that I ever did that. Like what you say you accomplished. I don't know if I ever, because we had such different. He was a drag racer. Like he had a very specific vision of what. Racer. Yeah. So he had a very specific vision of what of what life looked like, success looked like. And I don't think I ever fit into his definition of that. And that's sure. That's okay, because I wouldn't change anything. But I also learned a lot from him. Mm-hmm. But when you mentioned that, I was thinking, in the months since then, I haven't ever really thought about that. But I'm not sure if I ever got into that place with him.
Yeah.
I think it was even from little early stage. I can remember there was no commonality.
Sure.
No commonality at all.
Yeah.
And that's hard. And you have to, when you don't have things that you have in common, it's hard to build on that. So there was always that, but I think certainly my side, huge respect. And I do, I do believe that so much of who I am is because of him.
Sure.
Whether that's what I learned from him or in trying to be, opposition to him, I don't know.
Exactly.
But I know that, and I'm really, and what I found when I went home, so I went to Tennessee right after Christmas to start to deal with some stuff, and I'm so proud that I'm from there.
Yeah.
And there's so much, honestly, there's so much of it, especially the part of Tennessee where I'm from, that really reminds me of being here. Mm-hmm. I think that's where my love affair comes from. Like, I don't think I could have a love affair with where I grew up, but I can have it here.
I love that.
Because it is very similar. And it also, I was so proud that there was something about the fact that, I was at his house so I'm the only family, so I got to take care of everything. So I was at his house.
Gotcha.
And then about 2 miles from that was the plant that he worked at for 35 years. And he worked at, like many people that generation, you took a job and you worked at that job. That's what you did. And so he worked at that. The plant was right there, and then 2 miles in the other direction was where he kept his race cars and his garage. And so he wanted that smaller radius of thing. And I just remember from the beginning, I didn't want that. And so I'm so proud simultaneously that he knew what he wanted, and he was going to have that. And I feel like I've known what I wanted, and I'm going to have that. So that, I think, is commonality, and maybe I only get that later. Maybe it's after the fact, and I wish I had thought of it earlier. But when I was home thinking about it, I'm like, all right, I would guarantee, he didn't say this, but I would guarantee he had no regrets. Because he knew what he wanted, and he made it happen. And I'm like, that part I really respect. So maybe that's the commonality, and unfortunately, maybe you don't get that until it's too late.
Isn't that something?
But I was like, hey, I get this. And again, I'm so proud to be from there.
Yeah.
But I was not going to be there forever. That wasn't me.
That is, that's something. And that's something that's big, because we're all connected, like with our family, with our fathers. I think that we're connected, whether we like it or not sometimes.
Yeah.
And my father, me and my father, we grew to be closer as we got older. And I could call him he's my best friend. He's like, I'm not your friend, I'm your father. Yeah, you're my friend. And my dad too, right? So, but at the end of the day, it's more or less you compare, where you are, where you were, and you want to do better. Because my father always told me, he said, I always want you to do better than me.
Yeah.
I think that's important. You have to do better than I did. You have to make better decisions than I did. I did this, but I want you to do that. Some things I wish you didn't tell me, because I was like, well, I gotta live up to this, So, you just try to do that every now and then.
Yeah.
But as a kid, right? So, and it's something. But what were you gonna say?
I was gonna say that I don't know if it ever. I'm 53.
Sure, yeah.
And I'll be this will be a part of my, this discussion, like with myself about him, like that will always be part of me, like that. So that's, I don't know if it ever changes.
Oh, wow.
You're always going to question it, right?
Yeah. I think so. Us as human beings, we're going to connect to our fathers in some kind of way. I mean, our moms too, because our moms are amazing. There's no other love like a mother's love, right? But our fathers really kind of make us who we are, whether it's good or bad, whether they're in your life physically every single day, or whether they're not in your life and you never met them. They always, there was a story, I'm not gonna say who it was, but I met this guy somewhere, and he told me about he had this relationship with this lady. She was married anyway, she had a baby anyway. She didn't tell her husband that they was with another guy. 1 year later, he meets his daughter. Like 3 years ago. He tells me the story. It's like, no, you gotta be lying to me, because this guy is like kind of a big dude. Like, you gotta be. He's like, no, listen, here, look at the pictures, and here we are. Here's my Facebook. I said, get out of here. I said, you're telling the truth. And he was. Then he said, you know what? She's a spitting image of me, meaning she does a lot of things the same way that I do. She's stubborn just like me. She thinks of life just like me. And we never met for 21 years.
Right, but
isn't that something?
Is it nature or nurture? Right?
Yeah.
Is it that? Yeah.
Wow. It's like, and it's like, is that a curse? Is it a gift? What is it?
Yeah.
So,
and I do think it's like, I have to say, it is a true. I always remind myself, whatever that relationship is, it was a privilege to have what I had.
Yeah.
Because I go to. Do you know Nash Elementary School?
Yes, very familiar.
So I'm really lucky. I get to go there every week.
Really?
I get to mentor these little kids. I got 3. This year I had 3 dudes. And I'm, I don't know if it's that I'm emotionally that age, but I connect with like 1st, 2nd, 3rd graders really well. And I'm also, we were talking about comic books.
Yes, love comic books.
So I'm also someone who, I'm really into pop culture. So when they talk about stuff, I know it.
Gotcha.
I get it. I can, I'm like, nope, you got Spider-Man wrong. That is not, and so I can do that. But oftentimes, and I've done this for 4 years or so, and so I have different kids, typically different ones every year. Sometimes they move out of the district, sometimes other things happen, but the absolute change in them that they have someone, in many cases they may not have a father type outside school. And literally, I get 40 minutes a week with them, one-on-one. And I did not, people told me it'll change them. And I thought it's going to change me, but it does. Like that little thing.
That's so true.
You can see it.
That's so true, yeah.
And you can see it in every way. And so I beg people, if you get a chance, do something like mentoring.
Yes.
Because you will never, ever, ever know the actual impact that you're having.
Isn't it so? That's true. That's very true.
So I think about that, like for all the, I wish, what if I'd done this? I still recognize that I'm very privileged to have had what I had with my dad in every way. Because there's a lot of people that don't have that, and you can, it's tangible. Like we have so many kids in our community that don't have that, that continuity. Like just every week, someone shows up for them to spend 40 minutes with them. That has more power in a kid's life than just about anything. And it doesn't matter, we try to read together or do something. It's more just like, hey, I'm showing up for you this week. Nothing else matters. And my thing is I tend to try to go overboard. So my nature is to be like, do your parents need jobs? Do you need food? That's not what this is. You can't do that. Your job is to be that consistent thing once a week. And that is more important than anything else you can provide.
Wow, that's amazing. So one question popped in my head. First of all, I want to say mentorship is so important. It's really important. I talk to my kids about, having even a positive role model in your life and having, if you can be a mentor in some kind of way, shape, or form, capacity to somebody, because you are that shining light of sort to different individuals. But I remember mentors latching on to me when I was younger and encouraging me, whether it be like maybe a couple times a month or maybe it'd be once a month or anything of that nature. They would take me with them. And one mentor of mine was my brother. So me and my brother were a lot of years apart.
Okay.
He left, and I never got a chance to really meet him.
So he wasn't there when you were.
He wasn't there when I was growing up.
Okay.
So he would call, and all I know was his voice. So he would call me when I was like 6, 7 years old. And he said, "Hey, what's going on, Bobby? This is your brother Jess." I was like, "This is my brother Jess," and I'm just like super excited about it. And I talk about him everything. He's like, "Well, think about it like this," because he always had that out the box type of mentality.
Yeah.
Hey, you could think of it like this, but what if you could just so on and so forth. So he taught me more about the critical thinking.
Yeah.
Critical think, and then don't always show all your cards all the time. Right? Don't show them all the time. And he was just so smart, and I thought he was awesome because he was the first person that I knew that made over $100,000.
Okay.
And I thought that was huge to me. I was like, man, he's rich.
He's there.
He
did it.
Whoa.
Yeah.
At like 5, 6 years old, you're like, this is amazing.
Yeah.
So you
what's your relationship with him now?
We're still awesome. We the thing is, we're really bad about getting in touch with each other.
That's okay.
So I talk to him at least once or twice a month. But and he lives all the way in Texas.
Okay.
And the last time I seen him was when was this? In 2009, I think. Is the last time that I seen him, and I should see him more. But
he's still that connection.
Yeah, he's still that connection.
That,
we still talk. Now we kind of talk about other things. So we have sort of different viewpoints on some things.
Okay.
But we still, sometimes disagree. But we still have that love with each other. And I liked him because sometimes he reminded me of my mom.
Okay.
In how she took care of things. Because sometimes we would get sentimental about things. We would talk about her, and then he would say, you can't get a little choked up. And I'm like, you know what, man, I love you, man. I was like, I know, I could tell you really had a really big love for mom, and and then our optimism came from my mother as well, and my father too. But it was more or less, she was just optimistic about the weirdest things, like things are going wrong, and it's going to take a wrong turn. And she's like, nope, everything's going to be okay. It's going to be fine. I'm like, do you see what's going on?
She's like redecorating the lifeboats on the Titanic.
Yeah.
Like, oh no, we're gonna do this.
We're gonna be okay.
It's fine.
And then sometimes it does work out fine. I'm like, that's crazy. I was like, maybe I should be optimistic.
Her willpower, right? She willed it to turn out right. That's pretty amazing.
I think so, man.
Do you think you got that? Do you think you got that skill?
I think in some kind of way, shape, or form I do, because whenever I face adversity, even when it seems like it's in dire times or needs, I always said this thing when I was little, and it's so funny that I still say it. I was like, no matter what I do, I'm always going to be on top in some kind of way, in a good way, moral way. I'm going to be okay, regardless of whatever it is. I lose everything. I'm homeless, like for a day or two or a week or whatever. I'm still going to be fine. And it's like just to embody that and know that, and that came from my parents as well. Just knowing
that's where it came from.
That's
crazy.
Awesome. But enough about me, man.
No,
enough about me.
I like this.
So, but let me ask you real quick, because I know we're going to the county exec thing. We got a lot of different engagements. How do you keep up with everything? How do you keep up with the schedule? How do you keep focus?
To me, it's really about setting goals, and I would love to tell you that I try to, do some sort of, life balancing. I don't. I'm really bad at that.
Sure.
I don't sleep a lot. I never have, and I think that helps. Also, I have the most incredible support system.
Yeah.
Through my family and through my campaign manager, who is phenomenal. Alex. And that I think is, he's phenomenal. And that's another one where I think it's not that common of a skill to find someone and know, okay, I can do great things with that person.
Yeah.
Like, I want to invest in my relationship with that person because together we're going to be like 10. Like, I can do some stuff on my own, but when I'm working with him, and honestly, of all the work relationships I've ever had, my relationship with him might be one of the most productive. It just fits. And I think part of it is, as I age, I learn more about, I'm really good at this, I want to do this, I'm not as great at this, you go do it, and I trust you to do it. I'm not going to, whatever you come up with, I'm going to be okay with it. You're not going to produce something I'm not going to like, because I'm trusting you to do it. Now, it probably isn't exactly what I would have done, and it's probably better. So we've learned that.
So you're not a micromanager.
No. And there was definitely a time. I mean, when I first started to have big teams, this would have been like maybe 15, 16 years ago. Like I remember being in San Francisco, and I would walk down a hallway, and if someone who worked for me was in a room in a meeting, what's going on? What is that? What's happening? Why am I not in there? Why are you excluding me from that? And then as you become more confident in yourself, the question is, what else can you exclude me from? Right? Like go get it done. And it just isn't, it just, at the end of the day, it's not scalable. Like you can't read every email someone sends out. You can't.
No, you can't.
And no one gets to grow.
Oh,
the worst thing is working in an environment where you are not trusted. You've been there. The minute you said that, you've worked places where you weren't trusted.
Yeah, and it was wild. Yeah, I remember.
You're like, why am I here?
It's wild. Yeah, you know what? Going to what you're saying, and I always think about Jimmy Carter.
Yeah.
Jimmy Carter, if you know about him, he was a micromanager like no other, down to the paper, that had to be wrote on, but then Ronald Reagan was totally different.
Yeah.
And they say a lot of that has to do with the success inside of the office as well. Being micromanager to being, hey, you know what? I here's the job. This is what I want done. Get it done. Just don't break the law. Just get it done.
Yeah.
And then not having to worry about how it's getting done, but just knowing and having that faith that it's going to get done. It's going to get accomplished. And I believe for me, micromanaging. I'm really good at micromanaging, but I know that letting things just flow, it works out so much better for both parties, and you have more success with inside your company, with inside your family, with inside the community, and it just keeps growing exponentially.
It's another great role of data.
Yeah.
Right? Like it's when you're working with someone, part of your staff, you're like, look, our objectives, so one of the things that it drives me, it's painful. One of the things the county is responsible for, anytime that a minor in our community is placed out of the home, like court mandated out of home placement,
right?
That's the responsibility of the county, and that can be kids that go into foster care. It can be kids that have to go into residential treatment facilities for any reason, which we have a huge deficit of in this state. So we have kids that are actually placed out of state. Horrible. But the point is that, and I don't even know what my point was. What were we talking about? It's really good.
We're talking about
micromanaging.
Yeah.
The data.
Yeah.
So, the ultimate goal is we want less of that. We want less kids in the system. We want kids staying in the system less. And we want to look for facilities that don't cost, a facility out of state is going to cost so much more. So, if you start with that data and you go to someone and say, our goal, drive those numbers down. Then that discussion about success is not as subjective.
Okay.
It's like, and it's not even, it doesn't have to be a bad discussion. It's like, okay, what tools do you need that I have not given you to drive those numbers? Like, what's the barrier to driving those numbers down?
Gotcha.
And that I think is an alternative to that, checking in every minute, are you doing something? It's not scalable. You can't do it.
It's alternative. Wow, that's amazing. I'd like to say wow a lot. Amazing. And that's great.
I say absolutely a lot.
Absolutely.
My Alex.
Absolutely.
Alex will tell me. I think he has like a counter, and he's like, "You've said the word absolutely too many times, and you can't say it again."
That's exciting. My catchphrase is always get excited, and I think I learned that from business, but also learning it from my mother and father. So get excited. So you got to get excited when things are bad and horrible. When things are really amazing, get excited.
So it's take action, right?
There's subpar. It's get excited.
Yeah.
So
that's contagious,
isn't it crazy? Get excited, and then I gotta do something. Right?
Yeah.
Get excited. I remember one of my bosses called me. He said, "Get excited." I just had to fire 3 people, and one quit. I said, "Wow, get excited." So
those are great times, right? I mean, those are times to really, I get that. I like that. I'll have to use that more often.
Get excited, man. Hey, I gotta trademark that.
Go do it.
Get trademarked. But I'm excited to be able to sit down and talk to you, Jerry. Like I said, I try to look up as much as I possibly could on you, so I could figure out, what questions to ask you. I didn't know who you were, and I did see some race car stuff on YouTube and whatnot.
My dad, so we have the same name. So
Gotcha.
if you Google it, sometimes you'll encounter his stuff. I grew up near Bristol, Tennessee, and I remember going to the Bristol Speedway when it was dirt track. I mean, it was not, and so that's part of who I am too, which is really hard to believe, but that's part of who I am.
Fun. So do you drive cars really fast sometimes?
I don't think I should answer that.
Not as county executive.
What I will say is, I became conscious of that when I had a kid in the car.
I love that. Yeah.
Like, it's one thing. There's something that's, you talk about being primal. Yeah. There's something so instinctual, like when you have someone that's entrusted in your care.
Right.
That changes everything. So nice. I will tell you, definitely when I'm taking my kid to school and stuff, I'm very safe.
You ever go to the drag speedway down here?
Great Lakes?
Great Lakes.
Yep, I've been there.
Yeah. Okay.
One time when my dad came to visit here and wanted to see it, he'd never seen it, so we went up there.
I don't really know too much about it.
Well, like in drag racing, it's a quarter-mile track, and it's completely about. Actually, I just had this epiphany because I think this is where I've never thought about this, but the way that my dad got better was in optimizing every part of that engine. Right? Because it's a limited track, so you've got to go. It's all about that. I've never thought about that, but I wonder if because I'm always looking at things like, what's the small thing you can tweak that's going to have and I just wonder if maybe that's another commonality I've never thought about. But yeah, it was all about that, and he would go, race one Saturday and then go tinker with stuff, and then, you go 6 miles faster the next week. Or 11 the next week, and then you start to break those records, and it's really about that.
Jerry, something just popped in my head. Now, we're gonna finish this interview real quick. I mean, I don't want to take up all your time, but they say when your father passes away, he said that's when you become a man.
Oh wow,
that's what they say. I mean, I believe you become a man, when you turn 18, or you get out on your own. But I've always heard some of that. I mean, urban myth or something of that nature. But they say when you become a man, you start thinking about life a lot differently.
Yeah.
You think about your mortality. You think about, what compares you. How are you connected to your father in some kind of way, shape, or form? And I could say with some of the friends that I grew up with that did lose their father, I could say that some of that could be true. Yeah. I know for me, when my father passed away, I knew that I started taking life a lot more serious. From calling him every day or a couple days. A couple times a day, and then also going to what could I do better to be a man? I was like, I'm not really hitting on all pistons right now. I have a lot more work to go and do. So I would tell you, as you go further and further, and you start thinking, your piston starts turning, you're going to start realizing a lot more. At least I know I do. Yeah. You seem like you're a thinker. I'm a thinker, unfortunately. And I don't like to overthink. I like to try to.
You can get locked up in there.
You can.
You have to.
Because then you get anxious and you don't know what to do. And then you're worrying. And I'm like, you know what? I got to leave my worries at the door. I'm just going to focus on what I need to focus on and leave that stuff out there. I guess kind of get that delusional thought of everything is okay.
Before we started, we were talking about literature.
Sure, yeah.
And I was talking about Charles Dickens.
Charles
Dickens. Huge.
Yes.
It's been a constant in my life, and I love to read. I do Oliver Twist about every other year because I reflect on it. It's literally like reading it for the first time every time because your life changes and you see things. And this was a different one. I have to say, I read it just after my dad passed.
Okay.
And not that I'm Oliver Twist, but that the absence of a parent, is such a part of the narrative of that story that was something that had never been three-dimensional to me, right? And, I mean, I've probably read it. I mean, maybe even a dozen times I've read it, and that's what I love about it because I think great literature is like that. Like it is transformative, but it's also it's magical enough that you reflect differently every time you read it. And that was the one this time that I mentioned earlier that I think he writes kids better than just about anybody that's ever written in the English language. But only after I was a father did I resonate with that part of it.
That's fantastic.
And this time, like, it was the loss of the parent that really, when you read it, it's just, you can imagine it, but it's different when you've lived it. And so that was another thing that, it always comes to life for me, but this time that was the one that really, wow, that, you know, and the power of stuff like that, like you said, you got to be open to it though. You got to be willing. Yeah. You know, I think the cosmos gives you signs. You got to be open to them. I do. Yeah, you got to see them, and you got to know what they.
It's amazing.
You got to see it up here, but you got to see it in here too. See like your heart, just like your mind grows over time, your heart does too, right?
Yeah, I think
and
so.
you got it. You don't give up that either. You got to look at it through your heart.
Well, I want to say thank you again for sitting down with me and talking to me about so many different subjects.
Different than what I thought we were going to talk about, and I love it.
Right, yeah. I like to make sure that we can talk. You know? You know, leadership is really, truly important to my heart.
My goal is always, I want you to have a bunch of successes, but I want you to fail too.
Yes, failures, because
so
you can't
important.
be there. You can't be there.
No, and it's the best growth. Like I've failed hard, you know, a bunch of times, and those have been just as important to me, best learning experiences ever. And I want my kids to have that. Like I want you to fail big.
Yeah.
Now, you know, that builds you up. You got to know it, and it makes you appreciate all the other stuff so much better too.
It does. It does.
And it's gonna be hurt
from the interview altogether. But what I would like for you to answer is some interview questions that I kind of came across, saw on the internet and whatnot. The first question would be, if you were a tree, what tree would you be and why?
If I were a tree. So
your phone screen will go dark. Hold on. Sorry about that. All right. Oh, it goes dark. Sorry about that. All right.
So it's filming.
Yeah, it's still filming.
Are you into architecture at all?
Yeah.
Do you like architecture? So long time ago, like when I was in college in Tennessee, I traveled up to Chicago to tour all the Frank Lloyd Wright buildings and his studio in outside Chicago there. And at his studio and home, there is a ginkgo tree. The ginkgo has a little leaf that looks like a little fan.
Okay.
And there's all this legends and lore about the ginkgo tree being, like, if you drink it, longevity and long life and stuff. But I was struck by that piece of nature that was so interwoven with architecture that I would want to be that ginkgo tree, and I would want to be right there in the Frank Lloyd Wright studio.
Ooh, I like that.
So you probably meant like what variety, but I picked one tree. So I don't know if that counts, but I'm like, that's the tree I want to be.
I like that. I think that's awesome. Yeah, because there's no really wrong or right answer, but you know, just the reason why you want to be there, why not. So that's huge. Let me ask you this question too. Now, if you were from Mars, how would you solve problems if you were from Mars? Any problem. It doesn't matter what problem it is.
If I were from Mars, how would I solve problems? You mean like problems on Earth, or just if I were Martian, how would I do it?
Open.
Wow. I were Martian. So I would hope that I would have a perspective that was at a distance. Right? Mm-hmm. Like a different location in the solar system. That's a tough one.
Yeah. It is.
I think again, it would be no different to me than I would say like if I were from Switzerland. I think it's really about what personal experiences have taught you that you can apply to a solution. So I would hope that the other Martians had done a really good job of teaching me what I needed to know and that I had learned from the other Martians and that I could approach it intelligently with the same kind of heart that I want to approach everything.
I love that. Let me ask you one more question because I think that's great. Let me ask you this one. This one is a question of superpowers, since we talked about, you know, the DC comics and comic books. If you had a superpower and you had to choose from flying or invisibility, which one would you choose?
Invisibility.
Invisibility? Why?
Absolutely invisibility.
How come?
I think there's something about that ability to, it goes back to that micromanagement. Like the best way to step out and get out of the way is that quality.
Gotcha.
So that to me, like, because there are times, especially if you're a manager or leader, literally you just being in the room impacts everything. It changes the way people are transparent.
Oh, that does.
They're always thinking like, what does this person want me to say? That invisibility would help take that away.
I like that.
Yeah,
I like that. That's huge.
I like to fly too, but if you tell me I can only have one, I'd take the invisibility.
I like that. Okay, that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
That's actually a different answer than I've heard from other leaders. They say 75% of leaders usually say flying, but maybe the other 25% are the ones who are the even more in-depth leaders that kind of see life from a different perspective. I just want to thank you so much for this interview.
No, thank
this
you,
is
man.
awesome. It's been great. It's been definitely entertaining, thought-provoking.
Yes.
If you guys go out there and you do vote, make sure that you guys do make a vote, and you make it an educated vote. You go and research each and every single candidate. Check out Jerry's page first, of course, because this is where we are, and then go from there. I really enjoyed the interview. It was really awesome. Thank you so much, man.
I don't want to say if you go vote. This is a critical election.
Go and vote.
Yeah, let's not say if. Let's say when you go vote. But yeah,
this is the first time that I have been kind of aware of the county executive, the CEO of Kenosha election. Mm-hmm. This is the first time, and this is actually the first year that I've really focused on, government and making sure that because I have been grooming my kids and telling them, hey, we need to make sure that we're finding out what's going on a local level. Sure, we can do things on, hey, we have the whole United States and we have these elections in this way, but we need to know what's going on in county government.
This impacts you dramatically more than any other role.
Than you think, yeah.
And we've had solid leadership, consistent leadership in there for almost 2 decades. So it's not a surprise that people don't think about it. It's like we talked about when things are running great, but it's critical. Having the right person in there is going to be critical for all of us.
I think that is true. Hey, thank you so much, Jerry.
Thank you, man.
I appreciate it.